So, I heard about these two friends. One was black, the other one was white. Good friends, but they were fighting all their lives about a simple issue. Is God white or black? Unreal. They were fighting. Every time they would get together, doesn't matter the situation, the conversation, there was always a time that they were arguing. Was God white or black? Eventually, amazing, they both died on the same day. And they see each other at the gates of heaven. And an angel came to receive them. I said, welcome to heaven. And they ran to the angel and said, before we enter, please answer the question, is God white or black? At that time, God came to welcome them. And he says, buenos dias. I want to talk to you about the right kind of joy. The right kind of joy. I don't know, let me tell you something. I always like to tell you about my life and what I do. And I mentioned a little bit about this. I'm watching with my son. Now he's 10. I guess he's a little older. To watch some of the shows that I watched when he was too young to enjoy together, right? Because they are rated for different ages. So there is this American show. It's called Psych. I love it. It's funny. It's about this guy who pretends to be a psychic. He does that because he knows how to look for clues. In other words, he's smarter than the police, okay? So he works for the police pretending that he's a psychic, and he makes money that way. And we always laugh because my son, now he's watching with me, he does what this psychic does. He was like this and said, Dad, I'm going to tell you what you're thinking. And then he takes his wild guess, and it's funny. But I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, I will tell all of you what you are thinking right now. And I think you're wondering, is the rabbi going to talk about Sinwar death on his sermon? Have you thought about that? Have you wondered, is the rabbi going to talk about that? Because I believe this is a question that is happening all over the world. Are rabbis going to address the death of Sinwar? Because it was quite the news that we had in the last couple of days, right? Somebody, such an evil person that it died, and I've seen many different things on social media, many responses, people, Jewish people, celebrating and other things. And I was wondering how that make you feel, how the whole situation is making us feel. And I have to say, it's tempting to talk about what happened in Israel, about the circumstances of the death, right? And how that makes us feel. It's tempting. But yes, I'm going to talk about it, but probably not in the way that you expect. I think. Not in the way that you are expecting that I'm going to address the situation. But first, let me start talking about Sukkot, because I think this is very important. And it is important because it doesn't depend on anybody else. Anybody else's destiny or lot or luck or whatever. It's about us. It's about what we do with the festival and how we experience the festival of Sukkot without any kind of interference or external factor. That is the first thing that we have to think. And I think it's important because, as I mentioned at the beginning of the service, for those of you who came early and were paying attention, it's not the same. The rabbis call it Zman Simchateinu. Okay? It's not mentioned in the Torah, that specific name, but the rabbis call it Zman Simchateinu. In fact, that's the way we refer to the holiday in the liturgy, right? During the Midah, during the Kiddush, Zman Simchateinu, the time of our joy. Why do we call Sukkot the time of our joy? Many other festivals in the Torah are joyous. For the rabbis, Sukkot is super special and has something that perhaps has the formula to teach us what real joy is. And in order to understand that, we have to fully analyze what happened on Sukkot. Well, let's start by saying that the Torah also has another name for Chag HaSukkot, that is Chag HaAsif. Have you ever heard that one? We don't use it so much, Chag HaAsif, because it's connected with the harvest. Okay, Chag HaAsif should be understood, the translation is because it's festival of the ingathering, but it's not ingathering of people, it's ingathering of the crops. It's the very end of the harvest. Okay, so you get all the last little bit of the crops, all the last little bit of the harvest, and immediately after, you, I guess, I mean, I'm not a farmer, but I expect that what happened, you will assess how much crops you have. In other words, how much money did you make this last season? That will be figured out now that you were able to gather the last little bit. So in other words, one of the explanations of why this festival may be called the Zman Simchatenu, the time of our joy, is because it's a time where we could finally figure out how much we have. How much crops, how many properties, how many zeros in the bank account, right? And all that stuff. I don't think that that's the idea of calling it Zman Simchatenu, because we know from many other parts in the Torah that in Judaism, the levels of joy we experience should not depend on external factors. And then we realize that it is much more of Sukkot than just gathering the harvest and figuring out how much did we make in this past season. And that is the time to realize how many blessings we got from God. And it's time to realize that God is part of our lives, and we are recommitting ourselves, our whole being, serving God and becoming better people. When do we do that? The rabbis explain, when we get together the four species, the Arba Minim of Sukkot. Why it's that? Well, there are many explanations of why we get the four species and many attempts to explain the symbolism of each one of them, right? You probably heard that the four species represent four different kinds of Jews, right? And on Sukkot, we are all together. Doesn't matter if you study Torah, if you don't study Torah, if you do good deeds, if you don't do good deeds. On Sukkot, we're all together. It's as a sign of unity. And we should find joy in unity. Because we know when the people of Israel is united, we are strong. And that should bring us joy. And we know that we are not united, bad things happened. How can you feel joy in those circumstances? But when you feel the unity, you feel joy. But there is another thing that sometimes we neglect. Another explanation of the four species, the Arba Minim, the one that says that the etrog, this fruit that looks like a lemon, represents the heart. It's the shape, right? Shape of a heart. Then, basically, back in the day, the heart used to be the source of our intelligence and also the source of our feelings. You know, in these days, when we talk about intelligence, we point to the head, and then with feelings, we point to the heart, right? Back in the day, they believed that both were coming from the heart. They didn't have the sophisticated knowledge in anatomy that we have in this generation. But so the etrog symbolizes the feelings and the thoughts or knowledge. Then we have the hadas, the myrtle, the one that there's these little leaves that the rabbi said they look like eyes, human eyes, right? So basically our sights, our senses, represented by that. It's the way we connect with the world. We perceive the world, what we see, what we hear, what we say, what we touch, and so forth. Then we have the arava. the river willows, this kind of arched leaves. The rabbi said represents our mouth, is what we say. And that is very important because we know that in Judaism, what you say has the power to build or to destroy. God built or created the entire universe by saying, let it be light. So we take it very seriously, what we say. We choose our word very carefully. And finally, we have the lulav that represent our spine. In other words, our entire body. So when we put the four together and we shake them to the 6 directions. Remember, we do the four sides up and down, representing the presence of God. What we are saying is we are committing everything we have inside ourselves. Our whole being, we are committing our whole being to the service of God. And that's why, I don't know if you realize this, when you shake the lulav, that you go like this, but then like this. You have to go to the inside before you go to the next direction, which means that, yes, God is everywhere, but God is also inside. So the fact that we are recommitting ourselves to the service of God because we have the intelligence to do things. We have the health to do things. We have the ability to speak and to make other people feel good. And so many other things. We have our feelings. We have our knowledge that we can use to help others. When you realize that, everything that you have already inside, that is what brings you, that should be at least, what brings you real joy. Sukkot is a time to realize that that's all you need to feel joyous. And then there is Sinwar. I haven't forgotten about him. That I've seen people celebrating. And then I was thinking, that's okay. I want to ask you to be sad for the death of somebody, who is an evil person. I'm grateful that some level of justice was executed here on earth. Okay? But if you need to celebrate the death of somebody in order to feel joy, then we have a problem. If we need those kind of external stimulus to feel joy, it means that there is a problem in the way we perceive the world and our ways to find real joy in this world. Yes, we are grateful because an evil man is not alive anymore. But the real way we are joyous, happy, the real way why we dance in Sukkot is because what Sukkot brings to us. It's because everything that we discover that we have. It's because we realize the blessings that God sent us. And that is, my friend, the real reason why we should experience joy on Sukkot. So, while we are grateful for everything that God is doing for the people of Israel in the Middle East, my challenge for all of us is to find ways in this year to be joyous for what we have inside our lives and never for the death of someone else. Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach.